Hola chicos, gracias por sintonizar Bitcorner Podcast, el primer podcast salvadoreño de Bitcoin donde entrevisto a líderes, pensadores, economistas, políticos, educadores en Bitcoin y mucho más. Recuerda que este podcast es un puente entre todas estas líderes, pensadores y que están trabajando en Bitcoin y nuestra comunidad hispanohablante. Así que si quieres apoyar el show, por favor no olvides suscribirte al canal. Y si te gusta este tipo de contenido, dale el botón de like para que puedas compartirlo y llegue a muchas más personas. Y además no olvides darle a la campanita para que no te pierdas ningún episodio y te llegue la notificación de un nuevo episodio. Además, recuerda que este podcast no te ofrece ningún tipo de consejo financiero, es nada más para educación y entretenimiento, así que antes de realizar cualquier inversión, no olvides hacer tu propia investigación y sé consciente de tu tolerancia al riesgo. Ok, es hora de hablar del primer partner del podcast, que es donde yo protejo mis bitcoins, Blockstream. Cuando dejas tus activos digitales en un exchange o en custodia de alguien más, te expones a riesgos de terceros no deseados. A diferencia del sistema bancario tradicional, Bitcoin te permite tomar el control total de tus fondos utilizando tus propias claves privadas. Esto te permite ser soberano y esencialmente tu propio banco. Al tomar el control de tus Bitcoins, puedes evitar riesgos innecesarios de terceros. Almacenar tus Bitcoin en custodia de terceros como los exchanges puede exponerte a ataques de actores malintencionados, gobiernos o estafadores que lo único que quieren es apoderarse de tu dinero. El proceso de autocustodia puede parecer abrumador al principio, pero afortunadamente Blockstream Jade Wallet hace que sea súper fácil custodiar tus activos. Las billeteras de hardware son dispositivos que almacenan de forma segura las claves privadas de tus bitcoins y activos de Liquid sin conexión a Internet. Las billeteras de hardware aumentan la seguridad de tu billetera porque tus claves privadas se almacenan en un dispositivo especializado que no está siempre conectado al Internet. Como te he dicho antes, mantener tus claves almacenadas en un dispositivo en línea puede exponerte a factores adicionales de ataque, por lo que se recomienda usar una billetera de hardware al almacenar grandes cantidades de Bitcoin durante largos periodos de tiempo. Jade es una billetera de hardware no custodial para Bitcoins y Liquid que ofrece opciones de firma simple y firmas múltiples. Yo personalmente lo utilizo para almacenar mis Bitcoins, ya que me siento mucho más seguro manteniendo mis Bitcoins en una billetera fría que en una almacenada, por ejemplo, en mi teléfono. Si estás pensando en adquirir uno para ti, no olvides utilizar el código de descuento de nuestro show, BitCorner Podcast. De esta forma estarás apoyando directamente el show y además obtendrás un 10% de descuento para la compra de tu billetera fría. ¿Ok? Hora del show.
Natalie Burnell has done an amazing job of creating outlets for, women to really feel welcome at like conferences. Natalie Smolinski's done a really good job of just getting her voice out there and just being an advocate for, women of all different backgrounds to jump in and share their opinions, and people like Lynn Alden. And obviously, there are a ton of women in the space and more all the time. Oh, sorry, I lost my camera there.
No, don't worry.
Anyway, but I think it's changing rapidly, and I love seeing that, at Bitcoin events or conferences that there's, more of an even ratio of women to men, because I think that, you can't deny that men and women bring a different perspective to any situation. And so it's just been really cool to see how Bitcoin is kind of adapting in that way.
Hello, guys. Welcome once again to BitCorner Podcast. Today, we have a great pleasure to talk with Becca Bratcher. So, thank you for being here. Thank you for your time and welcome.
Thanks for having me on your show.
So, guys, this is if I'm not mistaken, this is the second episode that we do it on English this season. So, again, we're mixing a little bit English and Spanish. So, the first two episodes were in Spanish. The third one was in English. The fourth one was again in Spanish. But we're back in English. And the other one will also be in English. So, we're mixing. I listened to you. I know that you like both languages. So, everyone understand and get a little bit of information from around the world, so that's why we're doing it. we're mixing more episodes in Spanish. So this time we have Becca here, and she's going to talk about some amazing projects that she has. She's working on right now. But maybe to start the episode, as usual, I would like to maybe you talk to us a little bit about your background. And I know you study nursery, so maybe talk about a little bit about that, and then little by little we will get into Bitcoin.
Yeah, so my name is Becca, and my what I went to school for was nursing. So I worked as a pediatric emergency room nurse for a while, and I really enjoyed that. It was a great experience. And then a couple of years later, my husband and I had a couple kids, so I transitioned into something that would be more of a just work life compatible. And so my husband was the one who first told me about Bitcoin, and was very patient with me when I just dismissed him for a while on that because I didn't understand it. And then in around 2019, he started the Texas Blockchain Council, and that's kind of what made me pivot into wanting to know, what is he going to be doing, and what does this mean? And so I kind of started to dive down that rabbit hole, which I'm sure we'll get into more and more. But anyway, so yeah, worked as a nurse, then learned about Bitcoin, took that hard orange pivot, as I like to call it. And my friend and I, we did a podcast for about a year. It was called the Bitcoin Brew, and we just kind of did a recap of the week on what was going on in Bitcoin and some crypto stuff as well, just because of all of the like FTX and 3AC and everything that went down. I mean, there was no shortage of topics to recap. And then after about a year of doing that, I had the opportunity to write some articles for Bitcoin Magazine.
That's so cool.
Highlighting women in this space. Yeah, just because personally I wanted to get to know more women who are working in this space. And also I just think it's really important. I have 3 daughters, and I want them to grow up to think or to see themselves in a variety of roles. And so I thought, why not segue into making Bitcoin a little bit more welcoming to women of all different backgrounds. So
that's so cool. And normally I always like to ask this question. I think it's really appropriate to ask to you: have you ever unspilled your children yet, or not?
You know what? They can actually. So they're pretty little. They're 6, 5, and 1. But I mean, they're actually getting there. I mean, they know what Bitcoin is. They know what blockchain is. We have a couple like kids books on it. Yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah, I also have a nephew, and my sister is also a Bitcoiner. So we're starting to chat with him a little bit about Bitcoin. Yeah, in simple terms. Every time I go to visit him, I always put these episodes of the Turtle Twins that it's about Bitcoin. Yeah. Thank God he loves it. So yeah, he always watches it. Yeah, it's been amazing. I think actually, I was talking with Julian Figueroa about that. Actually, he made an episode recently about that he went to a school to teach kids about Bitcoin. And it was so amazing because he told me that it's a good approach, because they don't have the concepts that we already have, the misconception about everything, about what is money, about how finance apparently work and everything, So I think it's a good approach to start orange pilling kids at that young age. What do you think?
Oh, I totally agree. Yeah, I mean, the more they can be, just knowledgeable about the topic and understand, why it's different than like any type of fiat, I think is really helpful. It's kind of like teaching them a young language when they're, or teaching them a language when they're young, so that it's not as complicated when they get older, So it's just kind of like always natural to them.
Absolutely. And you mentioned that you also had a podcast. So how did you want the idea? How it came to do that?
Yeah, so it was called the Bitcoin Brew, as I said. And so Amy and I, she works at the TBC, and they have a recording studio there. And so we were just kind of throwing around the idea of like, hey, what if we did like a short little video, kind of, you know, just recapping what's going on. We had a lot of fun with it. And then time just kind of, I mean, it's just, life is so crazy with work and family and everything that we decided to just wrap it up after a year. And I mean, we might pick it up later, I guess. I'm not really sure. It was
Why
so much
not?
fun. Yeah. Yeah. So, and I learned a lot along the way because, you know, when you're researching and with the whole Terra Luna situation, that was a whole new topic for me. I did not understand what a, you know, stable coin really, like, I knew what a stable coin was, but just the whole situation, I learned so much.
Yeah. And how do you mentioned that your husband started orange pilling you, but how was your first experience? How did he orange pill you actually?
Yeah, so he was working on a dissertation for his PhD in blockchain-based land registry rights. And so it made a lot of sense to me that in developing countries, you know, just how much I take it for granted here in the US that we can have security in owning land, but it's not the case everywhere else in the world. And so the more that he explained that to me and what blockchain could do, it just clicked. And so then obviously he was into Bitcoin as well. And so actually a friend of his sent me the Bitcoin Standard, and then I read Inventing Bitcoin, which actually was more insightful, I felt like, just because it was concise and covered more topics. And Layered Money was also a really helpful book in helping me understand what, you know, money is and all the history of that and everything. So, and then my husband would just answer a lot of questions. Yeah.
Okay, that's so cool. And when was your aha moment? When do you realize that Bitcoin is beyond everything else that is not related to any cryptos or so?
I think the part of it that really clicked with me was how it is like, you know, the term freedom money gets thrown around a lot, but it's really true. You know, you don't have to just all of the caveats here in the US for you know, women especially who live at or under like the poverty line, or I just have a lot of rage towards the system on how they only choose to work with a select few, or you know, just people who are really doing their best to work hard, raise a family, you know, just create a better life for the people that they love, and they are just given the short end of the stick pretty much at every turn. And so Bitcoin can come in and help just kind of leverage that a little bit. Like it's gonna give people, I mean, of any background, just like more security. They can be their own bank. They don't have to rely on another third party who is running their life. You know, it's just like, oh my gosh, it makes so much sense. I didn't do a very good job of explaining that, but it just is like I don't know, it's just like for everyone, it's for the people. It is, you know, not biased, it's not prejudiced, it's free money. So yeah.
Actually, you know, this past weekend it was here a good friend of mine, and we were talking about that, and he told me that he's also a Bitcoiner, and he told me that he actually also read and he preferred Inventing Bitcoin than Deciphering. It's not that one is better than the other one, but I think for Orange Pill, it's like really quick, because if you read that, then you have more questions, and then you go to Siphoning, because Siphoning is like explain the history of money, and it's like 80% talking about the history of money to at the end understand Bitcoin, right? So I think it's a really good approach that, and it's super cool that you made it that way, because normally we stayed with Seyfedin's, and then you continue the Seyfedin's saga, and
Right. Yeah.
and then you go to jump to other books. But yeah, it's very cool. But yeah, if anyone wants to read a short book, go to Inventing Bitcoin and then go to Seyfedin's, because there's a lot of information over there. Yeah.
I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So you also mentioned that you were working on 21 women in Bitcoin, right? So can
Mhm.
you tell us about what is that?
Yeah, so the whole project actually was not my idea, so I can't take credit for it.
Mm-hmm.
It was a really cool guy. His name's Billy Gannon. So him and his wife, her name is McKenna. It was their idea to like, hey, it could be really cool to just highlight more women in Bitcoin. How about you write a book? And so that was the initial idea. And then talking to Bitcoin Magazine, we just kind of decided that it would be better to kind of test the waters because it is such a like niche topic, and there aren't a lot of women in Bitcoin, so we didn't really know how the audience would take it. They're
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, what if you start by writing some articles and we'll publish them online and just kind of see how the reception is. And so that's what
Mm-hmm.
we've done. There's just been an incredible response from the contributors who, have given me their insights, their Bitcoin wisdom. And it's
Yeah.
been so much fun to hear all these different stories, and as like a very wide range of women too. We have a CFTC commissioner, Summer Mersinger, who's done a wonderful job in the space of advocating for Bitcoin. Um, we've had Lynn Alden on. She gave a
Mm-hmm.
really insightful bio, and just across the spectrum, Caitlin Long. We have a whole line of other women who are lined up as well. And so it's just been the project has started as articles, and now we're transitioning to wrapping those up, and we are actually going to turn it into a book.
Wow.
But with that, it's going to be, along the same lines as Inventing Bitcoin. We're going to take 21 topics and then match them with bios. And so it'll be written by women for women. I mean, men can read it, but I don't know how interesting they'll find it. And so hopefully, for any woman who's curious about Bitcoin, regarding of it doesn't matter where their knowledge is at on the topic, should be able to pick it up and not only see themselves in the bios, but also understand what Bitcoin is. So that is
That's
in the works.
okay. Okay. And uh, first, before continue, shout out to Lynn Alden and her new book that is Broken Money. It's super good. I already started, I haven't finished it, but it's super good. So congrats,
Yes,
Lynn. Yeah, absolutely, right?
for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Have you read it? Have you read
I
it?
haven't read it yet. No, but I've ordered
Mm,
it, so I'm excited
yeah.
to read it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's super good. It's super good. Since the first page that you dive into it. Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Hmm. And okay, so you also said that there are not many women in the space, but do you think that is different from other spaces like traditional jobs, workspace? Do you think it's more welcoming, or how do you feel on this field, on Bitcoin space?
Um, I would say in the 3.5 years that I have been into it, it has
Mhm.
changed a lot. I think at like 5 years ago, maybe was not as welcoming to women. Whereas now, Natalie Burnell has done an amazing job of creating outlets for, women to really feel welcome at like conferences. Natalie Smolinski's done a really good job of just getting her voice out there and just being an advocate for, women of all different backgrounds to jump in and share their opinions, and people like Lynn Alden. And obviously, there are a ton of women in the space and more all the time. Sorry, I lost my camera
No,
there.
no, no, don't worry.
Anyway, but I think it's changing rapidly. And um, I love seeing that, at Bitcoin events or conferences, that there's, more of an even ratio of women to men, because I think that, you can't deny that men and women bring a different perspective to any situation. And so it's just been really cool to see how Bitcoin is kind of adapting in that way.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, you know that I had mentioned this, I think, in the first season, but the first person, well, no, yeah, one of the first person that actually helped me to start this project, this podcast, was Natalie Brunel. Yeah, so
Nice.
yeah, so uh, thanks, Natalie, if you're listening. I always say thanks to her. Yeah, and
Oh, for
actually,
sure.
yeah, and Julian Liniger also, and Lina Sarge. So they were my three first guests, and I always say thanks to them because it helped me a lot. And yeah, you know that little by little, while the podcast was growing, there was someone here, because in Barcelona we also have meetups every month. And actually, in the Bitcoin Pizza Day, I met a lot of people actually, and one of them was a girl that from Ukraine, and she offers to help me on the podcast, so she manages my socials. And one of the things that we were discussing while she was doing all the shorts and everything, she was like, you have a lot of percentage of women on the podcast. And so like, and I was like, yeah, that's on purpose, because one, I want to demonstrate that there is a welcoming space for women too, and that's why I always ask to you guys, if that is true, if you feel welcome, if you feel that it's kind of different or so. So yeah, because I know that in every single space there are men. Sadly,
Yes.
it is has been that way, but thank God that's how I feel also on this space. That there are more welcoming than other spaces, and there are a lot of talented women that get the opportunity to work here. So yeah, I like that, and also I always like to bring a lot of people from around the world, because you guys all have different projects or different backgrounds to share with the audience, so they get to learn more about Bitcoin, right? So yeah, I just wanted to share that
Yeah.
with you.
I think that's amazing. Yes, I love that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so yeah, actually, before we continue diving into Bitcoin, I think it's a good moment to make the trivia.
All right, I'm ready.
Okay, so as usual, guys, three questions. One question is about general culture. Second question is about El Salvador, and the third question is about Bitcoin. I might be mistaken about the order, but it doesn't matter.
Okay.
So are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, so the first question is about general culture. So one question and four options. All right. So the first question is, what is the largest organ in the human body? And we have four options: the liver, the skin, the heart, or the brain.
The skin.
Is that your final answer?
That's my final answer. Yeah.
You're correct. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it is considered to be the largest organ. So yeah, it covers your whole
Nice.
body and makes up about 16% of your overall body mass. So yeah, the second question is about Bitcoin. Okay. So the question number two is, what is the term for the process of verifying and confirming Bitcoin transactions by solving complex mathematical puzzles? A, transactions validations. B, hashing. 3, consensus mechanism. Or D, mining.
Mining.
Final answer?
Final answer.
Yeah, wow, you're doing super great. Yeah. Bitcoin mining refers to the process of validating and recording a transaction on the Bitcoin network. So yeah. And the last question, it's about El Salvador. So, have you been there, by the way?
I haven't. I'm really hoping to get to go one day.
Yeah, you should go to the Halloween party or to Adopting Bitcoin.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, the Halloween party is in April, I think, and Adopting Bitcoin is in November of this year and next year, and the
Okay.
next one, and the next one.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so what is the name of the volcanic lake located in El Salvador that is a popular tourist destination? So there is Lake Nicaragua, Lake Atitlan, Lake Coatepeque, or Lake Titicaca.
Oh man. I'm gonna go with B.
Lake Atitlan. Final answer?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
No.
Oh, okay.
It's Lake Coatepeque, and you should go there. Actually, it's super beautiful. It's a volcanic
Okay.
crater lake, and it's surrounded by lush greenery and making a popular tourist spot in El Salvador. So it's super cool. It's super. Yeah, actually, my family is from there, so
Oh,
shout out to
really?
Coatepeque.
Okay.
Yeah, yes,
Nice. I mean,
yes.
it sounds beautiful.
It is beautiful. It's super beautiful. Actually, I recommend to you to go on October because that's
Okay.
when the water changed the color. Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
It's a
wow.
natural phenomenon. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
What does
yeah.
it change to?
It's more like it's blue, but like I don't know, like greener. I don't know how to explain that.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. It's super beautiful. I will share a picture over here and I will send it to you in private so you
Yes,
can watch.
please. Okay.
Wow, you made it super good actually. Two out of three. So yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Well,
think
thanks.
you're winning the contest, I think.
Oh, okay, good, good. I was worried about that.
No, but oh, by the way, guys, by the end of the season, we will see all the scores and we will see how who wins. So it will be fun.
Ooh, all
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. All right. So talking about El Salvador, I know that you mentioned that you haven't been there yet, but what are your thoughts about the Bitcoin adoptions there?
Um, it's been really fascinating to watch. I I had at first I was like, oh, that sounds cool, but I didn't fully understand like what that would entail for uh maybe some of the citizens there. But
Mhm.
I mean, the more that I've heard about it, first of all, there's the fact that if you hold Bitcoin for 4 years or more, you won't lose money on it, or at least people haven't yet. And so I think Bukele's, I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly, but
No,
um, his decision to just step out and kind of just go for it and not really care what people think was really gutsy, and I think it's going to pay off, and I hope a lot of other countries follow suit in that. To be honest, I wish the US would do the same thing. I think it's been really cool to see how, from what I've heard at least, like the Bitcoin Beach area, how all the merchants are now accepting Bitcoin, learning about Bitcoin,
yeah.
paying their employees in Bitcoin. And so it's just kind of like a trickle down effect of Bitcoin adoption. And I think that's been amazing to see too, because you can't force, I mean, you could force people to use it, I guess, but it would be a nightmare. You have to put it into a real life like situation for them to like really care about it, to learn about it, to use it. So yeah, I mean, El Salvador is leading the way and teaching their people about Bitcoin, which is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, going back to what we discussed at the beginning of the show, that's why they now have implemented to start teaching Bitcoin in the schools next year. So, yeah, so it's a good approach because I
Yes.
think that's just like any other topic, like science, like math, like languages, like yeah, anything else. So I think it's the way to do that.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I've been following that a little bit. The primer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're rolling it out to every like public school, or
Mm-hmm.
are they doing it just a select few?
So far what I know, I don't know, I had to ask John, but so far what I know is that they're so they started with my first Bitcoin, mi primer Bitcoin, and then
Mm-hmm.
they're going to do it on national schools. So now, this month, actually, they are teaching to teachers
Okay.
about Bitcoin, everything, how it works, the fundamentals, all the concepts, and so they will be ready next year to teach in the public schools. But actually, that's a good question. I will dig into it. I will ask John.
Well, yeah, and I also heard that they're developing it into a college course as well. I'm pretty sure, which is amazing.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
they're way
because
ahead of us, that's for sure.
but you live in Texas. Hold on. How is the situation in Texas? I know that in mining is really good, or correct me if I'm
Mm-hmm.
wrong, but overall, how do you think is the adoption over there about on Bitcoin?
I mean, it's really great. Texas in the last couple of years has exploded with Bitcoin mining, mainly because of our energy grid and how it's all decentralized. And I mean, there's just a really great competition for like a free market, setup for Bitcoin miners. I mean, I think the biggest problem is like regulation, which is why so my husband does a lot of work with that, and he's made so much progress and is really doing a phenomenal job with it. And I'm not just saying that because I'm his wife. I mean, you can ask anyone in Texas and they'll be like, yeah, no, he's doing a great job. So yeah, I mean, I think I want to say Texas has about 13% of the global hash rate, so
Wow,
it's significant. Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot.
And a lot of that's just Bitcoin mine like building out what they initially purchased. So that's only going to continue to grow. I think so. The biggest holdup is just educating policymakers and elected officials about how Bitcoin can help them, because otherwise they're not really going to care much about it. But the amount of jobs that are created by the Bitcoin mines in rural areas in Texas that were previously pretty much desolate has
Mhm.
really gotten the attention of some policymakers. So hopefully it'll just keep, improving. But there's always that FUD out there, Bitcoin mining's bad for the environment. And I mean, that's a valid concern. But if you look at the breakdown of energy usage, Bitcoin mining actually is helping to bring on more green energy than any other sector. So it's just like a very nuanced conversation that takes some time. But I think the more conversations we have, and just being patient and, educating kindly,
Yeah,
it'll, it'll get better.
yeah, of course. I have a question because I don't know if they are related or they are the same. So there is the Texas Blockchain Council and there is the
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin Blockchain Foundation, right? So I don't know if they are
Yeah, yeah.
related or are they related or are the same thing or
They are like sister councils, if you want to call it that. So
uh-huh.
the TBC is a 501c6, I want to say,
Uh-huh.
and the Texas Bitcoin Foundation is a 501c3. So they're
Uh-huh.
different in the fact that one's educational and can accept donations that are tax. Oh my goodness, I'm blanking on the word, but you can get a tax write off for it.
Uh-huh.
Whereas uh, my husband's foundation or council is like a kind of like a industry association. So people pay dues,
Uh-huh.
and that's how they can, you know, do what they do. So they are different. They have the same or aligning missions for sure, but they accomplish different things. So yeah, they kind
Okay.
of work in tandem.
Yeah, because I mentioned you in private that last season we had Natalie Smolensk here, and I
Mm-hmm.
think she actually worked in both spaces, right? So that's why.
Yeah, so she was originally with the TBC, and then they just decided that there was a need. Like, there's just there's so much to do, and there's so little time, and there's so few people that understand Bitcoin enough to actually get it done. So yeah, they just decided to for her to go ahead and start the Bitcoin Foundation, and the TBC would, you know, keep rolling. So yeah, but she did originally help with the TBC.
Oh, okay, yeah. Now I get it because
Mm-hmm.
one of the topics that we discussed is that at that time, El Salvador was they actually wanted to open an embassy, a Bitcoin embassy there in
Yeah,
Texas. Do you know if they already opened it or not yet? Or do you
they
have
have
any
not
news?
opened it yet. I think maybe they're still in talks about making it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think that's
okay.
where it's at. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but that was my confusion because we were discussing about that, and I know the Bitcoin Blockchain Foundation help the government to open the Bitcoin embassy there in Texas. So yeah, and
Okay. Yeah.
she talks a lot about that, and the insights that she gave was really good. You know, I think that it will be a good agreement, a good deal for both parts. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, Natalie is absolutely brilliant. I love the work that she's doing, and she's got so much insight into the space. So yeah, I agree.
Actually, also I want to ask you about now that we're talking about US. Um, I was talking, the friend that I mentioned earlier
Uh-huh.
actually was someone from Texas, that is Gary Newman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, Gary. Yeah, yeah, I know him.
Yeah, and he came to Barcelona. And one of the topics that we were discussing, and actually we talk a lot about this. So I think it's a good question to ask you too. We were talking about the candidate president in the US. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think there are two or three that are Bitcoiners. One is
Mhm.
Kennedy, and the other is Ramasawi. I don't know if I pronounced it.
Vivek. Vivek. I'm pretty sure is how you say his first name.
Yeah, Vivek. Yeah.
And I won't. Yeah.
Yeah, no, so I was going to ask you about your thoughts about them.
Um. Yeah. So I definitely would lean more in favor of RFK, just because he seems to have a little. Man, honestly, our political system is a whole bunch of trash. I mean, it is so uh, polarized that is really hard to, like. I do not align with any one candidate. I mean, it's just impossible, and I don't think that any person would be like, yes, I agree with 100% of what this person says. I guess maybe there are people out there, but I haven't met them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Vivek, you know, he's pretty young. He's 38, I believe. He brings a fresh perspective. He's never been in office that I'm aware of. He has a ton of energy. I think he is optimistic, which is a good thing. And he is a Bitcoiner. But I don't exactly know. I haven't heard him speak enough to really know how much he knows about it, you know, like personally. Maybe his
Mm-hmm.
staff knows a ton, and like he's definitely latched on to that group of people as a voter base, but I don't know how much he fully understands it. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
RFK, even though I do disagree with his prior, like during COVID, the remarks that he made regarding some conspiracy theories, like I don't appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
uh, sure, I think COVID could have been handled differently, but that's a whole other thing. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I think him as a Bitcoiner, though, is quite impressive. He really does understand what it is, what it can do. He has a plan for what he wants to do with it if he is elected. And I think that he's moderate enough where he could really draw enough voters from both Democrats and Republicans, where if he can, you know, campaign well, he actually has a shot of winning. I don't think Vivek is as like maybe I just don't know that he has enough backing behind him to truly be a contender, but I could be totally wrong on that. These are just
Mm-hmm.
my own personal thoughts.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, and I do personally lean more Democratic, and so I think that's also why I'm a little bit more of an RFK leaning voter, but I mean, I voted for Biden, and I don't, I really hope he doesn't end up on the ticket. Like, I just cannot imagine him being, another 4 years of Biden. So it's a mess. But
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see.
But I think everyone that is listening to this podcast will get you. Even me before Bukele, we were disappointed from both parties. So basically, they were a mess from both sides. Yeah, so
Yeah.
we get you. And yeah, but I like to ask because one of the questions that many people had and still have about Bukele is that if he brought Bitcoin just because of marketing or if he actually is a Bitcoiner. And from what I know, because of Max and Stacy and other people that are close to him, he was a Bitcoiner before being a president, So he know Bitcoin from a couple of years ago, well, several years ago. So
Yeah.
yeah, so the opposition thought that it was marketing, and but in the end, my opinion is that if he brought it for marketing or in fact he's a Bitcoiner, it doesn't matter because he empowered people. He gave the power to people. He returned the power to people. So that's something that no one can stop right now. So even if someone comes later, he brought financial freedom to our country. So I think that was a huge deal there, and I think that's important.
I totally agree. I mean, it's like, he's definitely not a perfect president, but he's done a lot of good with choosing Bitcoin. So it's like, well, I mean, yeah, you can't deny that.
Yeah, absolutely. Proof of work.
Right.
I was,
Yeah, for
I
sure.
was, and I'm curious. When you started to studying Bitcoin, uh, what do you think that the word some of the most, I don't want to say popular, but the misconceptions about Bitcoins that do you think that people have around it?
Um, what were my thoughts on it? Like,
Yeah. Well,
yeah, I
both
mean,
actually.
yeah, I think one of the biggest misconceptions about it is that it is just like every other cryptocurrency, and that it's just kind of like, video game money, or it's just thing that's going to die out, but it takes a lot of energy and it's wrecking our grid. Like, I think those are the, our stuff in the environment, of course, it's a big thing with elected officials. But I mean, it's just when people say things like that, that they don't understand it. That they haven't read in depth about it. That they have something to gain from not learning about it. So it's kind of tough because it's like, especially in my experience here in the US, there's not as much of a need for it as, say, like in Kenya with Matching Kura and Norleen Sumba, the work that she's doing, or Marcel Lorraine and her Bitcoin data. Like, they are on the ground educating women, teaching them about how Bitcoin is going to improve their life. And so it makes sense, and people are going to actually take the time to learn about it. Whereas here, it's just kind of like there will be a handful of people that care to learn about it. But I think as a whole, it's more just, there's just not, I don't know, it's just different culturally. And it depends, like, if we do get a presidential candidate elected who is pro Bitcoin and talks about it, I think that'd be really helpful to kind of clear up some of these misconceptions, because people will be forced to learn about it. We don't, it's just different. So it's frustrating to me, like, when you talk to somebody like, whatever, when people ask me what I do, and I'm like, well, I write for Bitcoin Magazine. it's always so funny to hear what their first response is, like, oh, Bitcoin, oh, I heard this. And you're like, great. Okay, well,
Yeah.
let's start here,
And how do you think
Yeah.
is the best way to address those people who are skeptical?
Yeah, I mean, always just to like meet them where they're at, and to empathetic is not the right word, but it's along the same lines of just like, hey, they don't have a reason to understand it yet. So let's find that reason. Like, what's something that would impact their day-to-day life, and how could Bitcoin help with that? So that's kind of where I usually go with it.
Yeah, actually, I agree totally because you know, I was talking to John, like he is the one that founded the
Mm-hmm.
Movement Bitcoin, and he told me that they actually do that in El Salvador because they teach Salvadorians for different areas because that's and I get because even my country is really small. We all have different needs. Depends or what are you based on, because for
Mm.
example in the capital you don't have the needs that maybe you will have on the west or in the east because at in the capital normally there's a lot of commerce or businesses, so there's money, but in the rural areas, in the poor areas, of course, it's way different. So he told me that they teach other people from different areas of El Salvador because they know the needs of their population, where they live. And according to that, that's how they approach and start orange pilling these people about Bitcoin. It's a good approach.
Yeah, no, I agree. You do definitely have to. It's a geographically based education, kind of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to start wrap it up, but before that, I want to make a philosophical question that I always like to ask. Sometimes I forget, but one question is that what do you think that Bitcoin has contributed the most in your life?
Ooh, I'm sure most people would probably agree that this has been the case for them too. But when I started learning or wanting to learn about Bitcoin, I learned about economics. I learned about, the history of money. I learned about politics. I learned more about history than I've ever learned in my entire life. It's just the whole concept of a decentralized type of digital money. It just wrecks so many different sectors that I had to kind of like unlearn and then relearn. And so it's given me more of a desire to learn about, I've always wanted to learn what's going on globally, and, just real life ways to be helpful instead of just like spending, clothes or money or something like that. That it's like, no, like learning about Bitcoin, teaching about Bitcoin is really like helping anybody take ownership of what they have, what they can do with it, how they can build, save, grow. It's just really never ending. Yeah, I don't know. It's just like constant education, constant like this desire to learn about how to help people, and Bitcoin is a really useful tool in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And sorry, and
No, you're good.
yeah, and now I want to ask that I was thinking, um, what would you say to any woman or women in general that want to be on this space that are curious how to start learning about Bitcoin? What is your advice?
I would say read Inventing Bitcoin for sure. Such a great book. And then see if there's a meetup in your area, or go to one that's close by and just meet people face to face, because you never know who's hiring, who's looking for a talent that you probably have, or it's just like there's so many opportunities in the Bitcoin space that are really word of mouth, because it's just there's so few people that know who to talk to, who to hire. So I would just say go to a meetup if you can, and don't worry if you are the only woman in the room. Like, the people there are probably going to be super welcoming and kind. So yeah.
That's so cool. That's so cool. And actually, yeah, that happened in the meetup here in Barcelona. I realized about that. I'm new on this meetup. I
Uh-huh.
I have been there since this year actually. Um, but I noticed that at first. I don't know how long. I think that they have been doing the meetups around 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe more. I think it's more. Um, but yeah, since I'm going there, I noticed that there were a few women, but little by little there's more. Maybe words to mouth. Maybe they were curious and start talking about Bitcoin with her own friends, and then brought them
Yeah.
here. So yeah, it's super cool, and yeah, people are very welcoming. That's for sure. That's what I love actually about this space.
Yeah, it is unique in that way.
Mm. So, okay, I have my last two questions before finishing the podcast, and one is that what are you working on right now? And if there's anything you need to or want to add about the 21 women in Bitcoin, that's the opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, it's really just, and like, uh, we're developing the. Sorry, I'm like totally butchering this answer right now. It's in the works. There's not a lot of promotion going on right now because there's so many like moving factors that I want to make sure that they're set in stone before we start like promoting it and everything.
Okay.
But I'm really excited about it. I always love feedback. So if anyone, like if you or anyone listening has thoughts about writing a book or an important topic in Bitcoin that you want to make sure is highlighted more, I would love to get feedback or helpful hints on just anything related to Bitcoin and writing a book. And yeah, so I would love any if anyone can feel free to reach out to me. I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn, and yeah. So
All right. I will let I will put your socials on the podcast notes also. Okay.
oh, thanks. Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. Okay. So my final question is it's a bet. So what if this were actually a bet, which country do you think is going to be the next one to adopt Bitcoin?
Oh my goodness. Hopefully several. What? Okay, there was somebody just the other day, and I can like see the face, and I just cannot think of. I mean, isn't someone actively working on that right now? I guess we're
Uh,
supposed to make a bet.
who Samsung Mao? He's not really.
Um, Man, I can't remember. Okay, well, I'm not really sure, but I will take a gamble. Hopefully,
Right.
come November 2024, the US will at least have some
Oh, because there are the
candidate.
elections.
Yeah, yeah. Their election hopefully will end up with a pro Bitcoin candidate. So
Hold
I'll
on,
say
hold on.
that.
Do you know that every year that is a halving is also an election in the US? I didn't realize
I
about that.
know.
Coincidence or not, but
I read that. Yeah.
mm,
Uh,
yeah, actually that told me,
Suspicious.
yes, especially that fact
Yeah.
actually Gary Leland told me about that. I was like, oh, I didn't realize about that, but yeah, it's so curious.
Hmm.
All right, Becca.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time, and thank you for being here and share about your experience in Bitcoin. And hopefully to have you again soon.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, guys. See you next week. Ciao.